Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a menswear and knitwear designer. I focus on family histories and nostalgia and the juxtaposition of fabrics.
Hi, I'm Ellie and I'm a women's wear designer. I like to look at clothes as conversational pieces and I design for movements, not trends.
Hi, I'm ALANA. I am a women's wear and textile designer. I specialise in print and embroidery using mixed media and photography to capture my design.
Hi, I'm Shadia. I am a concept-driven designer and I specialize in experiential retail.
It's a hard question to answer that. I think the thing that I know is my speciality and my discipline is that I like to focus on knitwear and innovations in knitwear, creating new feelings and textures throughout that. But my main focus as a designer is on family heritage and those histories and bringing those into the contemporary and sharing my my nostalgias and all those lovely things that make us who we are present for everyone to experience. I mean, what about you, Alana? How do you feel about that?
I usually work with fabric manipulation and surface textiles, and then I drape it on the body to help conform my design. I usually look into quite, visual topics such as facial deformities and taboos, and they're quite controversial. So I try and use, scale and materials and the color palette that I use are always incredibly crucial to be able to display and convey what I'm trying to capture. Shadia, how do you work in your different design process that makes you stand out from us?
My design process definitely starts from theory. It comes from me reading thesis and then responding to that thesis through a concept. So then creating a concept, sticking with that concept and kind of allowing it to have its own life form. Throughout my third year, I only kind of used a white on white aesthetic. This was due to a concept called blank slate designing, whereby consumers actually have an opportunity to not just imagine, but kind of forcibly implement their own colorway on white garments so that you can completely have a personal experience with that garment. Experiential retail is definitely at the heart of my inquiry, and I'd say being experimental is one of my key traits. Open-minded as well about the process and how long that it takes to manifest into something that you're proud of. Ellie, what about your process? How does it differ, and what are your strengths as a designer?
I definitely think that I use the entire research process and I value that. I really like to get a good set of words and images, but also I really like to implement unusual but also really strong materials in my work. And I don't really stick to like their rules or maybe what they're supposed to be used for. I like to mix that up and create garments that those materials aren't being used for, because they might be a sustainable material that we need to start looking and putting into other ways of using them.
Reflecting on the experience of like being kind of like in an environment, in a studio-based environment, like what has it been like learning about the art of design and kind of like what it's like to be a designer?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think before coming to university, everyone tells you how hard work it is, and those first initial months in the first year is hard work. There's so much you need to learn, so much you need to understand. But by third year, the experimentation that you do, all the ideas and avenues that you go down is so exciting. And it really makes you consider areas of yourself that you'd never considered before, if that makes sense. What about you, Alana? What did you think?
Oh yeah, no, genuinely in third year, I feel like I found myself in the way I like to design and the way I like to work. And I think, you know, the way we work as a group, we are really, really, really good with each other and we inspire each other. And I think that's just been really helpful. And, you know, through life, I've always just been creative and loved designing. But I feel like I just found myself and came out of my shell in third year. I don't know. I mean, it's just all been really interesting and fascinating. What about you, Ellie?
I think the key word here is dedicate. I think honestly we've absolutely dedicated ourselves to this. And being a designer, I feel like I wouldn't be able to do it without the people around me as well. I definitely think it's a team effort. I think it's something that comes together as a whole. So I would use that word, dedicate, like really strong. Yeah. What about you, Shadia?
That is such a good point. Like, actually having like a solid group of people like around you enables you to kind of understand your own process more, and like kind of like your own responsibility in terms of design. But not only that, kind of like the ideas that you're having, you can tell them to other people and kind of like check in with them and be like, so what do you think about this? And that kind of can challenge your own process, but it is absolutely essential, I think, to have that solid group basis.
Almost validating everything that's going on around you. You've got that assurance from other people.
I think what's interesting what you said then, Shad, was that you talked about a process, and that process I feel leads us on to our own stories and the way that we react to research and create research and kind of do those kind of things. So it's interesting to hear maybe what we all think about our own stories and how we put those out there to the world. I don't know if you've got anything to say about that, Alana.
Yeah, no, I find that I like to really work organically, that I would take like an inspiration, not necessarily something very fashion relevant. An awful lot of times it's kind of, you know, sculptural or art. And then I really, really like to create, you know, really rapid response through maybe drawing or paint. And this year I've discovered that I really like working with enameling. And then from there, you know, creating prints or creating the textiles, draping it on the body. And then that always seems to end up leading me towards my design process, which is different because it's an awful lot more color-based and texture-based. And I find that really fascinating and interactive. And I've really discovered that in third year. Yeah, so I really just think that everybody works so differently. Like Ellie, you work so differently from me.
Yeah, I feel like I've been really confused about how I work and who I am when I'm producing work. Like I feel like this year only have I like realised the stuff that I've really enjoyed or what I'm good at and what my style looks like and what I would like to implement through my outcomes and stuff. I feel like the other years at uni have just been so experimental and so dipping into lots of different avenues, but also like I've just learned so much, and I feel like there's so much more to go. So I definitely say that this is the beginning of my, you know, story or, you know, my little path or whatever. But yeah, I've loved it. What about you, Shadia?
That is literally, I think it's crazy that you can have this experience of kind of being in this cohort together and then having this sense of completion, but really it is only the beginning. It literally is just like the very, very beginning of something that can be like so great. And I think learning throughout the process, it is, like we touched on earlier, is you dedicating to kind of like your practice and the way in which you gather information and respond to that kind of articulately within research that leads you to these like really great things that you can kind of spend your time doing and understanding. I think my process is very responsive in terms of I'll read a book and I'll be like, wow, like this is really interesting. This can kind of like respond to the way that we're living at the moment, or it can aid people to think in a different way. And I think that that is what my goal is to kind of think about mindsets rather than, I don't know, basing everything on aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah, go.
I think that, like Shadia, we have a really similar way of working in that we both use words a lot. Like I never really understood this, but I feel like you read things, you write things, and then you're like, oh my God, like this word literally says everything I'm trying to communicate, but obviously it's in a word form. So like what we're doing is we're putting this word form and this meaning into like this aesthetic and this product. I feel like that's really come clear this year, especially watching you work as well, like with all your writing. Like I feel like that's what I'm heading, like love using words.
Yeah. In-depth research definitely feeds your design and your idea, and I feel like it can continue so much more if you put in that really in-depth good foundation to begin with, and covered an awful lot of topics and looked into so much visual art and words and through poetry and things like that. It definitely makes much more quality work. And kind of, I feel like every time we do a project, it comes to the end and I'm kind of like, I could keep going with this forever. Especially in like the last week, you start creating things and it's like, oh my goodness, I actually just wish I could keep going with this. I finally, got on a flow. I want to keep going. Yeah. So I just find we all work so differently.
You work a lot with human photography, like memories, maybe, let's say, and human photography.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is what we've all talked about is like the different disciplines and different approaches we all have to creating and starting projects. I think sometimes, especially for me anyway, the beginning of a project is actually the hardest part. Now, usually most of us really enjoy, and we do all enjoy, really getting down and dirty in the research and finding new things that we'd never discovered. I think when we look at, like, we're all pre-industry, aren't we? And we haven't been not necessarily contaminated by ideas, but we're all very free thinkers and we're all very open to every approach possible. So when we look at things like the fast fashion industry, everyone's trying to knock each other off. And I think the story that we all convey is why things like this are so important in fashion still. We don't want to be, something that people just disregard and people want from season to season. We want something that lasts and has longevity, or something that just brings something completely new to a market. I think when I've looked at my own work and looked at stories and stuff, while it might take a while, I've always tried to focus on what we've learned from the past, mix that with contemporary, and bring juxtapositions always together. And I think it always creates a really interesting conversation in culture and in the ways that we as fashion designers and makers can bring to the industry. And I think that for me is why I'm so interested in fashion and what we can bring to that.
Yeah, you just touched a little bit on to kind of like, we're the new designers, the newbies, the fresh-faced. And I think, every time we come up with a new way that works for us and how we design, we never realize that it could completely change. I always thought, like, last year I had found how I worked, and then this year completely different, it completely changed. And you go into the industry and you're going to have, bosses and everything, and you never know how you're going to respond to different things. And you also touched on, like, us making sure we stay relevant. And I noticed that a lot of us, within our room, we're very much sustainable and ethical workers, and we're conscious about that. I know, Shads, you're very much, that's your go-to, and Ellie, like in your last few projects that you've definitely looked at the kind of the production of the different materials. I always try and use materials that are at least ethically sourced. I use like silks where the silkworm haven't been killed. So Shads, do you have a little bit?
I think that when sustainability comes into play, I think what my interest is, as kind of someone that has enjoyed making from the moment I can remember, is that if you take something that's old, that's already had this life and now is redundant, and you can use your time and energy to recontextualize that thing, whatever that thing may be, and turn it into a desirable product, that is what I'm interested in. That pure, almost, I don't know whether it's an intellectual art form, to kind of like be able to transform something that previously had a set of connotations and kind of set of rules, and actually say, do you know what, they're not going to be the set of rules anymore, and we're going to completely take this thing that once was something that now is disregarded and turn it into something that can be appreciated and kind of seen in a new light. I think it's about creating spectacle from mundane like things within reality. I think it's important that we're intuitive and kind of stay on board with the way in which things are changing, and it's just kind of the way that I think personally respond to the word sustainability as kind of like a whole. I think
Yeah.
I'd say maybe it was more circular, but
talking about sustainability, like how would you say, Dan, the future, what is the future for design, and what does that hold?
I think it's an interesting question, especially with, you know, coronavirus and stuff. I mean, we all hope, you know, that fast fashion slows down for environmental reasons, for people's sanity, for, you know, for everyone's integrity in design, that it slows down. But I also think that, you know, sustainability has been really overused. And I think that what we need to try and do as fashion designers in the future, whether we have our own businesses or whether we design or, you know, whatever area we go into, is that we make it normal. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, everyone touches on it like it's something that, you know, is a burden that you have to go out your way for. But if you don't have to, then what's the issue with it? You know,
Yeah,
I think everything I go into in my own process, you know, is just an unconscious thought. I will buy sustainable yarns without thinking about it. But then you don't have to sell it as a piece that is just completely sustainable, because people should then expect that.
They're constantly like selling things as organic and sustainable, and it should be a given. It shouldn't be something that we have to keep forcing it. I read this really interesting article once where a designer was saying she doesn't brand it as organic and ethical. She's like, if you take the time to read the label and read the manufacturing, it's organic. But she's like, that's the way it should be. Every single item should be organic, or at least ethical or sustainable. We shouldn't be constantly using it as a marketing ploy to like lure people in. And I'm not sure that I always necessarily agree with it, with, you know, organic cotton and things like that. You know, they're giving more money, but it's still not environmentally friendly. And I feel like you come up with a solution for one area, and then it ends up actually being more damaging in another area. It's just, it's not like a very good life cycle. It seems to just one or the other. And I think as a designer, I think if we're always, you know, we're the new group of people going out into the industry, and if at least we all teach 5 people to think a little bit more aware, hopefully it'll just start trickling down through, and it'll just become one of these things that's just happening.
Do you think that the way that fashion works is definitely going to change? I mean, there's definitely been some changes already with things going a lot more digital and stuff, but obviously I find that fashion can't always be digital. Like, I don't think it's definitely a digital thing that's going to live on to be like, I think some aspects will be, you know, encouraged to be a bit more, but I definitely think that clothing and design and fashion is so much more than just looking at a computer and interacting with your computer screen. There's people, there's touch, there's all the senses that are involved in it. Do you think that they'll change the way that fashion works, or do you think that some things will just become normal in like this digital kind of age thing we're going through?
I think it's hard to say, isn't it? I think, you know, do you guys remember in first year we did a sustainable little topic, and it was with the lady who runs Antiform,
Lizzie Harrison,
that's it. And in that we looked at the future, and we pulled apart certain garments and, you know, looked at them for their quality and all that stuff. And whilst doing that, we had some really interesting conversations, and we looked at the future. And it's interesting to look at that, because even though little things are starting to change now, for example, like some of the top designers like Gucci and stuff are cutting out shows every year and only displaying twice a year, but then fast fashion doesn't look like it's slowing down in the slightest. So what's going to happen, we don't know, but whether it's going to go back to where we run out of natural resources and we have to be creative with what we've already got. Whether our jobs as designers is recreating from what we already have, which a lot of us do anyway, or whether it becomes, like you're saying, Ellie, really digital, to the point where you have things like, I don't know, like a vending machine where you get your clothes out of and then pop it back in, and it unravels the yarn or something like that. I think it's a really interesting idea of where it's going to go. Not sure what you guys think.
Do you find at the moment even fashion's become, like, for me it's always going into a shop and like touching it, and it's really interactive, and it's an experience. It's like reading a book and then it becoming on the iPad. It's just not the same. Like, you're turning the page, you're interacting. It's the same with fashion. And I always thought with like it becoming an online forum already through, you know, online shopping, looking through at fashion shows digitally, I never thought it was quite the same. It was never quite the same experience.
I can't say enough, like, how much, like, the experience I enjoy going into the shop. And you know, you might not be wealthy and that you can go into these higher brands and have Prosecco and enjoy the day like that whilst you're shopping. But even the experience of shopping on a high street with the buzz of the people and touching the clothes, actually feeling and seeing the colours and everything, I don't think that, like, everyone realizes that there is this experience there, and that used to be a massive thing, and now you, in the evening during the day, you're sitting on your laptop and you're scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of products, and when you're on the high street, you know, there's still hundreds of products, but you're interacting with them in a different way that you interact with the screen. And I think that's where the value and the meaning is in these clothing, is you've gone out, you've gone to buy something, you have an experience with this item. I think it's being lost completely through this digital online shopping. I personally just love to go and enjoy that. Like, what do you think, Shadia?
To an extent, I do agree 100%, but I think that it is our jobs now as new designers to create experiential retail. It's been something that I've been really interested in for the duration of this year, but it's about how we as designers respond to the current situation of things potentially being more digital but still offering this experience within the design and actually within the kind of final make of the product, whether that's going on to kind of like bespoke things that are sent into you and then you create them and then send them back to the consumer, or whatever that may be. I think it's time for the system to kind of change in terms of the way that fashion is relayed to the mass market. I think that this is an opportunity, because we're going so digital, actually import's going to potentially change, and our resources of getting things from other countries might kind of come to a bit of a halt, not really a standstill, but still it might slow down slightly, which may give us an opportunity to actually say, do you know what, we've been shopping in this same manner our whole lives, but now we want to offer a new air of experience within the exchange of garments, and this is a completely personal experience to you. And I think that that is potentially where we can thrive as new designers, coming into this game and saying, actually, we're all experimental people, we're all open-minded, we're all able to adapt to the way in which the world is working. So it's about utilizing these skills that we've kind of learned throughout this process and saying, right, okay, how can we actually create not necessarily a product anymore, but selling an experience to consumers who are still looking for that same thing. They're looking for that way in which you go round kind of like a shop and you touch things and you feel things, whether it's sending samples and swatches in the post to your consumers, whatever it is, it's kind of allowing them to still have this 360 experience with fashion so that it doesn't lose its kind of like core art form.
Yeah, the industry was going to have to change. It couldn't keep up with the way it was going anyway. So we were everyone in the class, we were all in agreement. And I know most young new designers were all kind of saying we needed to change. We couldn't continue the way we were going because the world couldn't keep up with it. And now, due to, you know, the pandemic and coronavirus, it's obviously drawn attention to the fact that there are an awful lot of areas that actually now, due to, you know, maybe illness and stuff, we actually cannot continue the way we're going. Like refunds and things like that will no longer be getting loads of materials from other countries and having it all made. It's going to make it a much more, you know, in-house, creating your own country. And I think it's just going to kind of, if anything, I've always thought it was better whenever, you know, our parents were younger, you went in, you got it tailored, you made it, it was made for you. And it was much more kind of like a piece of art, and you invested in it and you looked after it. And then it was almost passed on. Like I remember you get hand-me-downs as a child. I mean, the concept of that now seems really bizarre because it doesn't last long enough. No. You know, young babies' clothes are being binned after like one use. I don't know, I just think it's going to have to change anyway. We
I
can't keep...
definitely think that interactiveness is something that you brought out in your final project, Shadia, through the fact that you were literally, you know, getting inside your
get inside the sculptures. Yeah, I think that
captured it.
It's definitely at the forefront and the crux of why I've been doing what I've been doing for the last year. I think that actually having this element of experience within a garment is something that's really important, because you're buying a garment to make you feel a certain way, or you're having kind of like a reactive understanding of this thing that your body is kind of encased by. So it's important to really think about what it is that that garment is doing, or what its intention is for your audience or consumer, and why they potentially want to be a part of something like that. I think it goes back to...
People don't realize fashion is power, because you look at someone and it's literally their identity, what they wear. And yet, you know...
I think what you're talking about is exactly right, but I think where the market needs it is for the accessibility for everyone. I feel like if you go to a high-end store and you're not comfortable going there, then you feel like you're not comfortable and you're not welcome. But if you are used to that kind of atmosphere, especially like Dover Street Market or something like that, I feel like you get that experience, you get the texturedness, you get the, you know, backstories from the staff that really know what they're talking about, especially in like, you know, all these different types of concept stores and stuff. And I think where it's missing is for the general public. And at the moment, I feel like, yeah, everyone doesn't have that appreciation at the moment. And I don't expect everyone to always have that appreciation. You know, some people don't care about fashion, and that's cool. Like, we don't always care about cars. We don't care about the next thing and the next. But if we lose that appreciation for what we have to wear day in, day out,
yeah,
I think this is where we've got down the road to this issue.
If the public could see clothes, I think, the way we do.
Well, that's the thing. Throughout this whole time at uni and on the course, you're learning every single thing that is being put into making a collection or a garment, and you value that because you understand all the work behind it. People consumers don't get to see the side of it that we see, and I think that's more and more being brought out with labeling and this, you know, honesty throughout the branding that people have been making and stuff. But still, you know, we understand that and we think that, oh, what more can we do? But there are a lot of people out there that don't understand the whole process behind it, and which are buying into fast fashion and losing touch with the experience. So it is about voicing and helping the people that, not helping, but like making aware of what we do as designers and valuing our job, because I feel like a lot of people just kind of think, oh, you just design clothes, or, you know, there's not very much into that.
What you just said was exactly how this needs to start, is just having a voice. I think having these kind of discussions between each other is how we all get to where we think we need to be. And
yeah,
we're lucky enough that as a cohort, we all get to sit next to each other, and when we're stuck and we've got 40 things going around in our minds, we have each other to get ourselves back on track. And I think that at some point this conversation will be with the general public, and the general public will be wanting to have this conversation with each other. I think it's up to us going into the industry now to give a voice to the general public and make them realize, you know, where we're coming from and where they're coming from.
It's responsibility.
yeah.
As designers, it's responsibility. As the consumers, it's responsibility. And I think if everybody's aware of all of the information, you see, we take our knowledge and our information for granted. You know, the first time we did that project with Anti-Formal with Lizzie, and the amount of stuff we learned about, you know, cotton and stuff. I remember I tell that to my friends here, and they're just like kind of flabbergasted. Yes. And about, you know, plastic and all of this. We know so much, and I think it's kind of up to us and for our generation to get it out. And I think if everyone is provided with that information and they still choose to carry on the way they do, well, we've given them the best possible chance to maybe take a bit more pride and be more responsible for what they're doing and what they're pumping back into the environment.
So what having discussions like this is what we want to take forward, but also you know, having discussions like this for sustainability is massive, but also having discussions about research and what's going on inside. Like, what do you value about that, Shadia? Like, what does this mean for you? Like, just talking now.
I think that having open discussions about something that you love is just absolutely great. As in, you can't kind of like, it's second to nothing. Actually having a conversation, an open conversation with someone about something that you thoroughly enjoy, something that you've kind of chosen to dedicate your responsive and creative ambitions to. I think that it's a great platform for uncovering new ideas, and actually not just new ideas, but developing on ideas and things that are already going on, and thinking about how we can, I think like Dan said, almost how we can use discussions like this and platforms like this to open up ways for other people to see what it is like to genuinely be a part of this, and actually not make it this closed industry where the public don't have any idea of kind of what's going into their clothing before they buy it, but actually saying this is how it's been made, this is kind of like the hours that went into it, if you want to buy into it, or if you want to understand and appreciate the level of honesty or integrity or the level of morals that's gone into cultivating this product or understanding, then it is about
it might be the way, but it might be the way forward.
Yeah.
Because I know due to the pandemic and everything, our whole end of year show has been changed and maybe made more virtual and everything. But initially we had been discussing about making it more of a kind of an immersive, maybe more like an exhibition with our development on show. And I think, you know, when I went to see the Alexander McQueen, the exhibition about behind the scenes and all of the different steps that it is involved in making a garment, I think if people saw that, when they go shopping, all they see is the final product.
Yeah.
But I think all those steps and the amount of, you know, thought and the amount of people involved in the process, be it where it's manufactured, the design process, even if it's got an embroidery or textiles worked into it, all those manners and that time and that effort. And I think if people saw that, they might actually take more pride in what they own and what they have, and it wouldn't be this single use thing and maybe be thrown away. It would be much more, you're investing in that story.
This is about changing the mindset of the consumer, and actually saying this product that you're buying is you're actually buying into what this product stands for, rather than you're buying into the way that it looks. You're buying into, obviously, the aesthetic as well, because it will be beautiful because you are a designer, but you're buying into the way in which it displays a set of morals or a set of understandings or a set of knowledge that says, okay, I'm kind of part of this new, almost like new movement, which says I'm not really okay with spending my time investing in fast fashion and kind of the industry as it stands.
I think it's how all brands try and start out. I mean, if we look at Vivienne Westwood, her whole brand was based on a movement, and the fact that only certain people that really represented the brand could wear it. And I think over time, even though, you know, she's a pioneer and she's great, I think brands start to lose that narrative as they display out to the general public. So maybe it's not even the fact that everything needs to be completely accessible. Maybe it's just that brands need to represent each group, and that once each group's represented, people can appreciate those brands for what they are, you know? And I think to tie this conversation to an end, as we end this conversation, I think what I've appreciated most is the group of people that we've been working with for the last 3 years. And maybe it's nice for us to quickly reflect on, you know, the best parts that we've had of this course, which bits we valued the most, and for people that are coming into this fashion industry, where we're about to leave and how they're coming into where we've just been, what kind of advice we have for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of daunting, to be completely honest, even going out into the industry right now. But I think it's at the start. We're the start of a movement. We're also being kind of forced into a movement. We have to reevaluate. And I think that's kind of beautiful. You can almost say, you know, we literally were at the very, very start of maybe a completely, as everyone's saying, the new normal. So I think, you know, new designers, if you love it and you take passion and you take pride in your work, you will you're definitely going to really, really enjoy it. And you never know, you might have come up with a new solution. And I think, you know, you're ever changing, you're ever developing, you're ever learning. It's very organic. You learn so much about yourself as a person. It's not just about being a designer. Like for me, from first year to now, how much I've grown, how much more I kind of enjoy looking into things in depth and being able to create links creatively. I think, you know, it's the start, and I'm actually very excited about the rest of the journey.
I would definitely say to people that are like, even students that are about to do the course that we've just done, I would definitely say don't think you have to do this alone. I think you need to take value in the fact that you've been put into a group of people that want to study the same thing as you, and use that to your best advantage, because a lot of students at uni are still studying, you know, alone on their course. You know, they're in lecture halls and they go and they sit, and, you know, no one really interacts in the way that we've kind of interacted with our whole class as support and inspiration. You know, a lot of other courses don't allow that. So use this to your best advantage, and use the group that you're with, and use everyone to support you and inspire you, because like you'll look back at it and you'll be so thankful that you were able to complete these 3 years hardworking, but also as part of a cohort. That's been really important.
100%. What about you, Shad?
Yeah, the cohort's really important. Actually, kind of having a group of people to bounce ideas off, it's essential to the design process, I'd say, this reflection. And I think what I'd say to people wanting to come into this industry is be prepared. Be 100% prepared to come into this industry, and be resilient, and say 100 times a day, this is not going to work, but I will push through, and I will find the answer, and I will create and create and create until something comes out of that creative process that is innovative, that is attentive to the social climate, that is understanding, that allows people to prosper further within design as a whole. It's about wanting to create a space for other people to still be able to do this. We don't want to be in a position where we can't continue to practice doing fashion and being designers and loving an art form and being part of a dedicated craft.
100%. I couldn't agree with everything that everyone said more. You know, it takes so much work to be able to understand this rather than be good at it. And I think if anyone's at that starting point, we've all been there, where we feel out of place, we feel worried, people are better than you at other things and you're worried about it. But you know what, give everything time, because at some point something will click, no matter whether it's first year or third year. You'll figure out who you are, you'll figure out your strengths and your weaknesses, and as a cohort, everyone brings each other together and lifts each other up. And I think that, for me, has been the most valuable thing, having all of you guys together to reflect, to push each other, and to open each other's eyes.
Isn't it funny that none of us have actually been worried about the best person in the class? Like, that was never on anyone's mind. And to hear stories and like other things about other schools and universities that, you know, people are nasty, but I've not met one person in our group that's been absolutely bothered at the fact they're not top of the class, that their work's not better than anyone else's. I think that has not even like touched on anyone's mind. I think people have been more worried and concerned about supporting everyone, and actually, I love your work and that is so good. What can I take from that? Instead of being, you know, negative about it, everyone's been so positive about the whole class and really using other people's work to inspire them. I just think that's been amazing, because it's not expected, it's really not.
And it's also like, people aren't going, oh, it's good, but secretly going, well, haha, it's really
no.
Like, nobody's being spiteful, like, genuinely, no. But I don't think we can reiterate enough how having a good group of people keeps you going, because I cannot say how it is a lot of hard work I feel like coming out sometimes with a degree, unless people are in the industry, they have no idea what goes on behind the closed doors. They have no idea how much work it entails, and how much, you know, you end up being kind of an expert in so many different areas. You know, every element of our development this year alone, you know, it was through make, then through designing for the final collection, and then our last project being our portfolio. You know, we're incredibly well-rounded people when we come out of our degree. And I think, you know, for anybody new, you never know, you might find a whole new dream, but it'll be worth it. And yeah,
I remember there's places outside of London. Bristol is the best cities in the country. So.
Come to Bristol. Yeah,
it's been lovely, guys.
Yeah, well,
it's nice.